Hello everyone, and welcome to this, hopefully my first of many videos on me and my painting. So as you can see, I sped up the old video here. The original painting took a good couple hours to paint. I've edited it down so that you just kind of follow along. So basically, what we have here is first of all, I'm working off a photograph and some other paintings I've done. This is a place that was Julia Pfeiffer Beach or something like that. It's up in Big Sur. Anyway, I've done a few paintings from this area, and so I kind of have, field notes, color and stuff like that from paintings done there. So this one is actually a larger painting I'm doing here in Yule Studio, as you can see, off a photograph that I took of this beach. Now, one of the things that you have to understand about when doing a painting from a photograph is, number one, the photograph is always, especially when it shows on the computer, is just way oversaturated. And the colors and everything is just super duper oversaturated. So just know that going in, you're going to be desaturating those colors. Because if not, you can kind of see it up over on the back side of my head on this video, what that looks like. And those colors doing from a photograph, especially like you get the really color rich saturated pictures like sunsets, sunrises, stuff like that. You tend to get really saturated color. But when something like in this picture, it was pretty much in the middle of the day, nice bright sunny as all get up, windy like you wouldn't believe. Oh my god, it was a blowing. Like the sand on the beach is like giving you some microdermabrasion on your legs. It was that bad. So anyway, so the thing here I have to do with this is you start off by, first of all, you block in your basic composition. You want to offset your focal point area. You want to make sure you have your focal area set, and then all the lines and whatever is going to go into essentially leading your eye into that painting and bring your eye through the painting or whatever. More on the composition later. But the important one on this one is what we're doing is we're setting the tonality of the objects. So what I'm trying to do is, you can see it's not really that great because, of course, I'm not really that good at the camera stuff yet. But I'm setting the darks first. And then two, I have a dog here who is trying to get my attention for some odd reason. So anyway, to continue on, after rudely interrupted by the dog. So here we go. So we have to set the tonality, and by doing that, we're going to set our darkest darks first. Even though it's not how it really ends up being, is what happens is you need to key off of something. In this case, usually it's your mid-tones, it's sometimes it can be your light tones, but mostly you want to key off your what are called your mid-dark tones. And that's going to be, at least in this page you can see, is the lower end of the cliffs, or those rocks as they come down to meet the ocean, meet the water there. I'm doing that with a ultramarine blue and the cad red medium. And then just a little touch of your cad yellow. As what that does is it gives you a nice dark, and those are generally going to be my darks as I go in there. And then I come in with a little bit of white to just test out the grayness of it and to put that gray back in there. But I'm going to use mostly cool dark, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. And you can, when you mix those three colors together and you add a little bit of white, it brightens it up so you can see how warm or cool your gray is going. So anyway, so we're just going to keep plugging along here, setting those darks, and looking at the photo reference to try and figure out some of the shapes, because you want to keep, I don't know, you don't necessarily stay so true to the picture because you really don't want your painting to look like it's a photograph. You just stick to the photograph. You don't want to do that. You want to use your other skills that you've learned in doing plein air painting to, figure out how to make a painting a nice painting, not a photograph reproduction. Number one, because then it's just a photograph. Number two, you know, the hyper-realism of it is, I don't know, it's tedious for me. I'd rather have more expressive work in my paintings. I guess that's what makes painting a painting, is your expressive brushwork. So you can see here is what I'm doing is I'm putting in the foreground, in this case the water. And so you can tell that it's like that water, I really bring up the purpley part of it. And it's because in the picture and the way the water is just amazing there. I mean, oh my God, it was just amazing. I mean, just crystal clear water in the oceans. And anyway, so is what I use is I use a little bit of sap green. And in this case, I used also some, it was a cool red. I forgot exactly which one it was. It's a color I don't normally use at all. But so I used the sap green, that red, to put in those dark areas of the water as it comes up under the cresting of the wave coming in. Because, you know, it just kind of really gives that seeded kind of look to it, to where the you know, the waves are really coming up over the water. And so as I go and put in this water, the water is still fairly gray. I'm not going with like white, at least not yet, because, you know, like when you see the backgrounds and the front water, all you really do is at this point in the painting is just starting to build up your textures anyway. The composition is just more or less set, and so now I'm just putting in the background characters, if you will, of the painting. This is just the underlying tonality of the painting's structure. I just want enough to, you know, you can see it's all blended. Nothing's really that brought out. There's really not a lot of detail in it. And as I progress in the painting, I'm going to, you know, I'll be bringing out more and more detail, both in the rocks and the foreground water. Also, I'd just like to note that the fisheye lens on this paint, on my camera, makes me look like I am about 300 pounds heavier than I normally am, but I have lost some weight. So don't go off the camera adds 10 pounds. Well, it has a lot more than that. Anywho, so I'm just still playing along, defining up some of these shapes in the between the rocks, the water, and the relationship, because you want to bring your eye into a painting, bring you through into and escape through the painting. And so that's just what I'm basically doing here. It's just refining my shapes, refining some of the colors that go into it, refining some of the, because again, I don't want it too saturated, but I want it to be, you know, vibrant enough. It's always a nice fine line. I'm trying to figure that out. Anyway, little helper lines here and there. Now here's one thing, if you notice quickly here, is I'm wearing a glove on my left hand. I think I'm like the only person that does this. So it's like a gardening glove, you know, you get. And so what I do is I use that, and then I hold my rag in that hand, and I wipe the brushes off. And my right hand, I don't like wearing gloves on my painting hand. I need to feel the brush in my hand. I know people wear latex gloves. Just, I don't know. So anyways, I've got a bunch of like right hand gloves that are like in really great shape sitting around my garage, but all the left hand gloves just kind of get used up. It's kind of funny. Anyway. But if you ever see me wearing just one glove, that's why. It just protects my hand while I'm using the rag on it. Now, the one thing that, as we follow along here, I am just putting in a few more rocks just to kind of help guide the eye into it. I'm not using all the rocks that were in the photograph. I'm just using choice rocks, ones that I think add to the painting. And I'm just setting in some dark areas just to kind of place them in there and how I want them to show. Now, the one thing that I want you to notice is, as I'm painting, a lot of time is spent on the palette down below. A lot of time spent there, because that's where you're going to really get your colors to work. Not so much as up on the canvas, but you really want to work those colors down on your palette. And the way I do it with my super limited palette is I just know if I'm going to go warmer or cooler. And you can use, it's almost like an imperceptible amount of color that you use. to work into the same puddle of color so that your tonality is constant throughout. I mean, it's like it's really hard. And I think I did it in this painting where it's like I did it once just to be like, oh, let's see if we can push it a little. But if you work at the same color palette or the same puddle of color on your palette, you're going to stay within the same tonal ranges of everything. You're going to have something that's like, and I see this a lot with other paintings where it's like they'll have like this really dark blue against something else. I'm like, why the hell did they do that, man? It's like it's glaringly obvious that you missed the mark with it or something like that. But you know, people are like, oh my god, it's the best painting ever. I don't know. So I don't know. Hey, it takes a lot of coffee to make these paintings. So also I worked on this painting over a course of a couple of days. So anyway, so you know, here we are. We're just going to, as I start to dig into some of the more details and more nuanced refining of my shapes and colors, I'm putting in some of the white highlights and sparkles and stuff like that of the water. And again, it's just a matter of playing with the shapes that are already there. And I'm staying within the same tonal range as the color that's already there because it's on my palette. I don't have to worry about remixing or trying to get anything to match because it's already there. I'm just going to make something a little warmer, a little bit cooler. And if I want to make it a little more saturated, I just mix the same colors without the white. If I want to make it less saturated, yeah, I'm just adding white to it, and in very small amounts, very, very small amounts. Because even if it doesn't look like it's changed on your palette, just by the very fact that you've added it, it's going to change it. And then when you put it up on the palette, up on the painting, you'll notice that very small changes make a big difference. And so it's kind of like, you know, it's a little bit of faith, I guess you can say, if you're going to do it. It's a little bit of faith, but I more think of it as more of a calculated movement. You know, it's more of a calculated, I know I'm adding white, therefore I know it's going to desaturate a little. I'm adding some red and yellow, so it's going to be a little bit warmer. But I'm always using it within that same, more or less, area, or the same puddle of color, so I know I'm staying within the same tonal range. Now here I am scraping the palette. So it's like, uh-oh, I'm starting over from scratch, right? Am I? I don't know. So here we are. I'm now, it's another day, and I'm working back in the, no, is it the same day? I don't know. And so I'm going to start working back into those, the two cliffs in the back. Now that I have set up this warm area that is right under the crest of the wave, I'm going to go back into the rocks and see if we can, you know, just bring out the shapes a little more texture, a little more detail, a little more interest. Because while I thought they looked great then and there, I was like, oh my gosh. But then I'd stand back and I was like, I don't really like the shapes that much. And there you can always scrape paint off if something doesn't work right. So here I am. I'm just putting some more details, more textures, looking at the photograph, trying to figure out, you know, what made these cliffs so neat? What made these rocks so fun and neat? You know, what part of the scene did they add to it? And so that's what I'm trying to convey into the painting, is just the interest of those rocks to make it not look like too bland. I don't want them to be too prominent. I don't want them to be glaringly something. I don't want to take away from the paint. So it's like it's a fine line to just kind of put in just enough texture, detail, emotion, feeling into those the two rocks here to give the painting its nice serene feeling. In the one on the right, I'm setting back just a little bit further than the one on the left, which is kind of how it really was. But in the photograph, you would never know it because everything's just so oversaturated that in the photograph, they just look like they're next to each other. But in the painting, I want to give that just a little bit of offset so that it kind of leaves you feeling like, you know, leading you in through the water, bounce off the left rock, the right rock, and then on in through the space behind. Nothing wrong with taking a phone call, you know. You gotta take a phone call. I mean, how many people have ever, you know, you're out playing your painting, people come and talk to you, so, you know, hey, you gotta have a conversation the way it goes. But the one thing with having the rocks, after putting in the initial tonality of the rocks, You know, I can always come back in and mix the color to be real close to it, and you're just adding, you know, a little bit of flavor to the rocks. Paying attention to the angle that the light is playing against the rocks. That's very important. You know, is it more saturated? Is it less saturated? Is it more color, less color on the facets of the rock as it slopes down, as the slope of the rock is coming down to the ground? And if you'll notice, the bottom of the rocks are way warmer than the top part, and that's almost like a little trick in the eye there, because what we're doing is we're seeding things in, just like everything. If you ever paint anything out, whether it's there or not, put a little dark area at the very bottom, and that just like seats it into the painting. It doesn't look like it's just floating there in midair. So that's a little trick, the old painting technique here. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of refining some of these shapes, some of these dark areas, some of the light areas, and just refining it until I like how the shape is not too stiff. You know, it's very organic. You don't want to be too stiff. You want it to be natural looking, but I don't want to pull anything away from the painting. You see there, I don't look as fat. You see, because you can see that my back curve. Anyway, I also may have bad posture. I'm not really sure. So as we're cruising along here, again, I'm just mucking with some of the shapes, trying to bring up some of the tones from the bottom forward, playing with the shapes of the darks, then putting in some of the highlights to give it a little interest. We are not done with the bottom part by a long shot, because the last part you do is you go into some details. So now we're going to start working on some of these items in the water, and then we're going to really try and make the water come alive. Like, you just want to step into that water and feel how ice cold it was. To be honest with you, it was so cold. Oh my god, it was not a good day to be out painting. You never know it in the painting though. But yeah, that day was blowing pretty hard and everything. So anyway, let's cruising along, trying to oh, look at that shift. Look at that. Oh my gosh, what a fade. So what happened was, you know, I took a break, and what I did is I sit back and I study the painting for a while. And, you know, I just sit in a chair and just sit there and study it while drinking or having coffee or tea or something. And so that's a really important part of painting process, is being able to sit back and look at your work and critique your work. Then I came back and I just had to do a few other little changes here and there that were kind of bothering me, and it's a little bit later in the evening. That's why the lighting has changed. So anyway, that's I think that's about it for this first video. Tell me in the comments if you like it, don't like it, something, whatever. I don't know.